Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Platform Enterprise, the show that platforms radical solutions to our living crisis. I'm your host, Rachel Donald, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a writer and a journalist. You can find my work at www.platformenterprise.com and subscribe to get my newsletter and this podcast delivered to your inbox every week. That's www.platformenterprise.com. On today's episode is economic anthropologist Julio Linares, who joins me to discuss Circles, a cryptocurrency project that also provides a universal basic income to its users. That's right. This is a universal basic income crypto, and their aim is to eradicate world poverty. It is absolutely fascinating. Julio is a real expert on the subject. I was so thrilled to get him on the show, and I'm so honored to be able to platform this project. You're going to absolutely love it. So, if at the end you do, please leave the show 5 stars and leave a review to let Julio and I know what you think of the conversation. Finally, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, you can actually go and watch it over on satellite. So head to www.platformenterprise.com and follow the links to watch this episode. Okay, everyone, without further ado, enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to learn more about Circles.
Yeah.
It just sounds absolutely amazing. I've been gunning for this interview since Ella platformed you.
Nice. How did you meet Ella?
So she was platformed by Baruch, who was platformed by Blake.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to keep this like kind of through line of communities that are working together, not necessarily even on the same projects, but for the same goals and values.
Totally. Yeah, I know Baruch.
Yeah, it's really cool. I feel very, very fortunate.
Cool.
So please introduce Circles to the listeners.
Okay, cool. So, hello, my name is Julio. I'm from Guatemala. I'm an economic anthropologist, and I work on a project called Circles, which is, um, I would call it a money system, a credit money system that is trying to give people the power to issue money and claim the right to have an unconditional basic income.
Claim the right to have a conditional basic income.
Unconditional basic
Unconditional
income.
basic income. Okay, great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a universal basic income is normally defined as uh, a unconditional amount of money, usually a cash transfer or any form of money that is readily used as a means of payment. So without means testing, so without you having to prove that you are in a specific gender or a specific income category or a specific type of demographic, like you just get it because you exist.
Mm.
And this is normally thought of from a policy perspective, from a government perspective. With Circles, I mean, Circles is just a technology. Like socially, what we're trying to build is like a social organization to really try to democratize the economy through the democratization of money and the social organization that is needed. So in practice, we have assemblies that people can join, and we host many different ways in which we try to connect different local actors in the city here in Berlin, and also with other people facilitating this knowledge of direct democracy, direct democratic organization. So, connecting local farmers to supermarket cooperatives to local shops, restaurants, alternative delivery options, and so on, and really try to connect all these, different values or different practices that people are doing together, and yeah, try to like make enough wealth circulate within the network that people can actually eventually claim the stuff that they need to live, right? So it's like
Right.
we call it like a basic income from the bottom up, and that's why it's kind of hard because it's really you're kind of going against the grain in some ways, right? But at the same time, the system at least allows for people to get out of this sort of hyper local nest that many sort of mutual credit systems that have existed for many years before often sort of get stopped at. So I mean, mutual credit systems are really great, really good in the sense that they allow people to go in and out of obligations with each other, in and out of debt with each other. With Circles, you can also do that, but the payment system also ripples down. So if I want to send, I don't know, circles to L, I could do that through you, for example.
Right.
uh, and so it's just, architecturally speaking, it's just an interesting system to create a more a mesh of credit networks that people can, so sort of use as a way to claim resources. And it's really the power to issue promises, to issue credit, to issue money, which is, I think, the empowering side of it.
Right. Okay. There's so much to dig into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's start with like the structure of it. Is it a cryptocurrency? Is that how you would define it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the problem with the cryptocurrency in general is that they have a very like regressive idea of what money is. Like me as an economic anthropologist, we study money from many different points of view. And in like when you look at something like Bitcoin, that's called a cryptocurrency, it's supposed to be a current, something that you see, something that flows, something that
Mm,
moves around. But Bitcoin has this really old regressive idea of money. Like it's thought of something almost asocial in so many ways. I mean, it's really this idea that money is intrinsically valuable. No, Bitcoin is sort of intrinsically valuable, and then if many enough people believe it and then make articles about it, it just
yeah.
grows and grows and grows,
Yeah.
and it's basically a bro cult in some ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the
So
ultimate commodity fetish.
yeah, that is it's sort of commodity fetishism in some ways, and so to call, I wouldn't even call most crypto, like I would call them tokens, like crypto tokens, blank objects, as my friend Brett calls them. uh, Really, so Circles is really trying to be a credit system. So I don't know if I don't yeah, I guess you could call it a cryptocurrency just because it's easy to refer to it like this. But yeah,
No,
I
we
would.
should refer to it how it's called.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it uses a blockchain, right? It's
Okay.
based on a blockchain, so it does have this element of encryption and decentralization to it, which allows for eventually different people setting up their local versions of Circle everywhere, right? So right now we have one Circle system that unintendedly, it was an unintended consequence. It became viral on Twitter, on crypto Twitter, and yeah, people all over the world took it up. So people in China, people in Latin America, people in Europe, people in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, people in the US. Many people in the US took it up. So uh, of course, that's also the thing. Like people are so used in the crypto world, people are so used to this idea of money as like something that you can make money out of. Like I'll put it
Mm,
in an exchange, I'll sell it for more than what I got it from, and I make some money. And that's why when people saw Circles, they were like, "Oh, free crypto! I'm gonna just sell this for Bitcoin eventually, and then make my money."
right.
And they were like, "Hey, this is not an exchange. This is not what this is meant for. It's an IOU. You issue a promise to somebody, and then you can claim stuff for it, right? It's
Oh. Okay, sorry. It's like it's I've I've been thinking about it a lot since Ella mentioned it and like in preparing for this. And I was like, how do you separate, like a token from exchange value? Like I was really, really, really trying to wrap my head around it and I struggled, that's how kind of indebted I
mm,
am to the idea of currency and money. But right, okay, it's like saying, you've given me this and here is something you can claim it back against, or like when you need something from me, you then come and get it.
yeah,
You
exactly,
cash it
exactly.
in.
Yeah,
Ah,
kind of. Yeah. I mean, it's like for example, like I don't know, you want a tea from the local tea shop, and this tea is in the network, and they give part of their production, their future production, onto the network, and
yeah,
so you can go and pay in Circles for tea, and then the tea maker can use that to buy milk,
yeah.
maybe at the local farm, for example.
Right.
And then they can use that for maybe they need, I don't know, a dentist for their daughter, or help with distribution or whatever. And the idea is that you democratically find, like you organize with people to find those things that these other actors need
Mm,
to localize the economy more, to
mhm.
make it more, more more interdependent with the local circuits. I mean, we've lived in this horrible like globalization, like a couple of decades now with neoliberalism, that there is no, like, people have sort of become very deterritorialized, and now with COVID, I mean, people have seen that there is a really big need to sort of empower the local circuits, especially in a place like Europe that has such a legacy of colonialism and so on, like
Mm.
to really build more local circuits of exchange, that it's not just local; it's also interdependent with other regions here, but also more sustainable, right?
Right. Okay. And then so how do you decide how much, like a certain, okay, so if I want to buy a cup of tea from you, for one, I think it's called trust, right? One token.
Yeah, so there is this element of trust in the system. Trust in the circle system means basically two things. One thing is the ability to, yeah, basically issue credit to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I trust somebody because I know that I can claim stuff for them, and they will accept my circles, and vice versa.
Mm.
And the other one is about, it's the trust element. There is more about like, when you trust somebody to enter the system right now, you need three people to trust you. So it's basically
Right.
saying this person is a human being. So Rachel is real. She's not a bot created by somebody to, like, claim
Yeah.
a basic income. This so yeah, so those are the two means of trust in the system. One is like a sort of relational way of yeah, a lot, like making sure that people are people who say they are, and then the second one is the ability to to issue credit to somebody else. I mean, whatever that is credit, that is trust, right?
Mm.
So I think that's really important to say. But about what you were asking is about the pricing. I think with the pricing, the conditions we set were for the euro, like to try to um, have a parity with the euro. So what we tell, like, vendors is like, if you want to sell, I don't know, a meal for €5, you can charge the same in circles. So
Okay.
instead of €5, you charge 5 circles. So one to one. So the ability to create this consensus is important at the beginning.
Yeah. And do you find that typically people are happy to price at the use value as opposed to the exchange value, or is that kind of an issue that you're coming across?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, people try to yeah. I think the use value is definitely way better. Yeah, I think there are always people who are like, hey, I want to sell a plant for 200 circles, and people are like, wait, what? I'm not gonna buy that from you,
No.
you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to create that. I mean, most successful mutual credit systems have managed to do that, to create some sort of parity with the national currency, even though they don't have as much economic power of, like, things moving in the network. But just having that really allows people to it's easier to understand, how to pay stuff, but it's also makes for a more trust, really more confidence in the system.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I think if it's quite an alien concept,
Yeah,
then having that like baseline, that parity, as you say, is really, really helpful for getting people involved. But I have so many questions about this, like how you get a project like this off the ground, even because as you mentioned globalization, and
yeah,
if we keep going back to the tea example, it's very, very unlikely, well, it's pretty unlikely that somebody who's selling tea in Europe in a cafe is sourcing their tea and coffee from Europe. So,
yeah,
if
mm,
further down the supply chain, they're not
yeah.
using this method of credit or circles or whatever, then how is it possible for people like to start using it within their communities? What kind of hurdles do you have to overcome?
Yeah, I think first of all is to understand that money should be thought about as also as a territory, in the sense of, like, you have to see what is sourced with it, like where does it come from, like as you're saying, like the coffee that is made in Chiapas comes all the way to Berlin, and people may pay in circles for the coffee, but the person who gets the money, the circles, it's not gonna pay directly the person in Chiapas, maybe. We don't know, uh, but
Hopefully one
but
day.
hopefully one day, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, the thing about this is that you're trying to really get people to think about where do things come from and what can you actually source in the network, right?
Mm.
So of course, like sometimes I work with like Berlin hipsters who are like, oh, I want my spiritual cacao from Brazil and I don't know what and so on. And I'm like, okay, fine, but like what about I don't know some like other stuff that you can source from here that you can use for your spiritual practices.
Sure.
Like that's also totally fine and valid. It's just I think about really making a collective decision about the types of things that we want to claim and source from the region. I think that at least allowing people to have that choice and not just to like be subjected to like, oh, do you buy at the Edeka or the bio company, and it's all already really based on this class thing. In Berlin, I don't know where you're based, but um, in Germany, like supermarkets are really about class. Maybe some a lot of the times, like more or less which class people belong to depending on where they buy.
Yeah, sure.
And if you really want to have an alternative to, I don't know, the crazy monocropping food system we have now in Europe, that also fucks up the rest of the world with the EU subsidies and so on. It's like you grab a thread and you realize that the thing is really way more entangled than you think.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's really about getting people to realize this by organizing the economy around them, and then see like, hey, what the hell. What are these policymakers doing? Why are they allowing all this meat to be imported from the Amazon forest that kills a
Yeah.
forest in the Amazon and
Yeah.
then destroys the what's left of the small and medium farms in Europe?
Yeah.
And so it's, I don't know, I think that's why I said, like, we have to think about money as a territory of defense, in the sense that, like, if we accept if we keep accepting the money of the state and the bank money, we're basically just saying yes to all the exploitation that happens down the line. Like, Circles is trying to do a more consensual money, in the sense that you can actually build relationships with the producers and the different distributors, and also the people who do a lot of the care work. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
my a professor of mine used to say, like, you make a cup once and you wash it 1,000 times. Most work is just maintaining stuff. So also to value those flows, I think it's important.
This is really, really, really interesting. And I really like how it's at once a tool and also a framework for asking questions and for interrogating with the current mode of doing, and therefore a path forward as well. I really, really like that. My question then at this point would be, what responsibility do you think we have in the West for ensuring that global supply chains are sustained while we try to change them, because of the communities who are exploited for their labor but do also still depend on those terribly exploitative systems in place for their own money, for their own food, for their own communities.
Yeah, I think like, for example, like, as part of my activist work, like, we, like, with some migrant collectives here in Berlin, we've done a lot of work going to, for example, Brandenburg, which is like this region that surrounds Berlin, and it's a rural area, and there's a lot of agriculture going on. There's a lot of land grabbing that happened. So we were talking to people from La Via Campesina there, which is this like peasant farm, or like organized like farm network that started in Brazil and now it's also in Europe. And they're like, hey, like, the lefties or the people like in the city in Berlin, they have these, like, high and mighty vibes that don't really care about what's going on in their own rural areas. Like, they may care about what's going on with, I don't know, the Zapatistas in Chiapas or in Rojava in Kurdistan or Bolivia and so on. But what about their
Yeah.
own agricultural sector, right? So I think it's really about breaking this alienation, or I don't know how to call this, like, that you can actually change the system by just building relationships with these people and building bridges. That there is a connection between the financialization of housing in Berlin, that makes the rents go up, and also means that the people who make all culture and the art and stuff suffer, and the people, migrant people and other people who don't have a lot of stuff to live, um, they will suffer. And the financialization that happens in Brandenburg as well, with the land grabbing and the big monocultures, and how that's tied to the big subsidies for the big Bayern company, that boast all these like monoculture farms that just destroys the planet. So I think the responsibility is to people to think where their feet are, and to act according to that. I think that's I think that's the thing. Like, there's so much people that especially in like Europe and the US, who have this like I don't know, it's like a savior complex, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna go to Africa, I'm gonna go to Latin America, and I'm gonna like save those people and civilize them and develop them and whatever and whatever. And it's like, like actually, like poor countries are developing rich countries, right? Through this
Yeah.
like uneven subsidies. And I think by building local power in Europe, of like economic and political relations, through different circuits of exchange, then you can actually challenge the institutions and tell them like, hey, why are you still charging a tariff to for all these exports and imports that we get? I think that just building local autonomy, local power, it's important.
Right. Okay. So it's pretty arrogant to assume that we could be of benefit to a quote unquote third world country when we haven't sorted things out in our own backyard, where there's still huge income inequality and yeah.
Yeah, I mean I mean, if you want to be an internationalist, you also have you can only be an internationalist if you start local.
Yeah.
Like, like you cannot be,
Yeah.
so I think it's really important. Like, if you want to like be in solidarity with the people in Brazil who get all these fucked up agreements to Bolsonaro and so on, then understand what's the relation between that and what's happening in the EU and the agricultural sector and so on and so forth, and then see
Mm.
where you can come in and try to do something. Like, I
Mm.
see that like in many of the projects that are trying to do interesting things in Berlin, it's like they're really good projects with really good people, but they will only like, also including circles, like we will only become a really powerful force if we connect and unite and build something that's bigger than our own projects, right? Because oftentimes it's really all about like this individual entrepreneur and the founder, and everybody's a founder, and I don't know what they found, but they you know it's like we need to really get out of this individualist logic,
Mm.
like.
Yeah, yeah, and stick to building bridges between the communities and between the projects, as opposed to yeah, trying to take home the title or whatever it is. Yeah, welcome to uh, welcome to late stage capitalism, social enterprises. Okay, so in a world with circles, then say let's say you get all of Berlin
Mm.
on circles. So I want to get into the details a little bit more. So this would be a universal, basic, unconditional income for people because they could go to wherever they need and give these circles of trust, these IOUs. Say, okay, I'm going to go to the dentist, and here's 10 circles for that. Now, how would for people that are laborers, for people that are employees, how do they help? How do they reciprocate the circles? If I'm not in service, if I'm not an entrepreneur, if I don't offer quote unquote something, how do I exchange that when somebody comes knocking on my door?
You mean if you're like a worker, like a
Yeah.
laborer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can also offer your labor time.
Mm.
You can help in, like I said, like you can help in other stuff. Like, the idea is that people take the economy in their own hands.
Yeah.
So they say, hey, maybe I cannot, I don't know, produce tomatoes, but I can maybe help to pick them up, or maybe help to distribute them to the city, or maybe help to organize the local distribution point, or maybe help to give do something in the community that
Yeah.
it's also part of the communal labor,
Yeah.
that allows you to feel that you're also part of it,
Yeah.
right? And then you can also claim stuff for it. I mean, I think that's the important part as well. Like, of course you're going to have inequalities between who produces more and less, but at the end of the day, it's like we can all give something, and then we can all claim something as well. And I think it's important for people to see that, like, many people today have this issue that they're like really like craving for meaning, like in their lives, like they have this incapacity, like inability to produce meaning. Like, capitalism doesn't allow people to produce meaning.
Mm.
And so, like, something like circus is just giving a space for you to say, like, actually you can organize things together with other people,
Mm.
and then claim stuff for it. And of course, like when I go to shops, I don't talk to them about the blockchain and universal basic income, and these are like really, really like big concepts. I try to bring them down and just say like, hey, with this you can claim stuff from these shops, and what do you need? What do you need? Do you need supplies? Do you need advertisements? What do you need?
Mm.
And then we can find that. And I think this is the logic that you have to kind of get into. Like, how do you support each other?
For sure, for sure. Does that mean though that circles can be claimed back against other people? That it's very much circular. So if I buy tea from you and I give you two circles, then you can go and use those two circles to get more tea from your tea supplier. It doesn't directly have to come back from me,
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
right?
It ripples, so
Yeah.
it doesn't. Yeah, like that's what I was saying at the beginning. Like basically, like the trick is to really find those local circuits. So
Mm.
like between three, four, five different like rings. So
Mm.
people, I don't know, as I said, like it can be a farmer, a logistics person, like distribution and production are always intertwined, right? And then and then yeah, to here to the local supermarket that sells it, and then also to the restaurants, and so on and so forth, right?
Mm.
So I think it's like it can yeah, the
For sure.
idea is that it circulates, yeah.
For sure. And how does one then start? Say, I get nominated to be a part of this system. Like, do you start somebody with a certain number of circles, and then it's on them to also like grow that by giving back to the community?
Yeah, so right now, and this is an interesting thing, like we start once you enter the system, three people trust you, you get 50 circles, and then you get 8 a day. So the idea is that everybody all the time gets an equal amount. So the system is by itself inflationary, to make sure that there is to minimize this thing of like the early winners. So like
Mm,
so over time, because everybody's always issuing the same amount, if you enter first, over time the difference will be lower. So inflation is always a process of redistribution, right? The problem that today inflation is, the 99% lose their purchasing power,
yeah,
and just through debt and other mechanisms, just all the wealth goes back to the 1% through banks and all these things.
yeah.
In circles, we're trying to make a system that is more equal in terms of like redistribution internally. But people only really start to issue money or issue credit once they really go in and out of obligations with each other.
Mm,
Uh, but the idea is that you always have the power to issue credit or to issue money, and that's really hard to get people to feel that power, because we're so used to being money takers. We're not money makers. Does that make sense?
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. So does that mean like who is generating the money then? How does this get sent out through the blockchain? And I'm sorry, I'm revealing just how technologically illiterate by
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that.
Totally. I mean, for sure, there is a protocol that has all of the code where all these parameters are set. But I think it's important to that's what I meant. Like, people shouldn't be feeling like there is some entity called a blockchain that then makes you trust people, and then money comes through this system. But actually, people are the ones who are issuing the promises outwards. The
Yeah,
the, the credit outwards.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, you're making opportunity for other people. I really see now more and more how it is about facilitating social relationships and building up communities as opposed to just
totally.
a cryptocurrency. I understand now why you were kind of yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
money is a social relation. It's just we're so used to thinking of money as a thing.
Yeah.
This is how 99% of the world thinks about money.
Yeah.
It's like, here is this object, and this is money, and it's,
Yeah.
look at it, it's so shiny and,
Yeah.
and, and brown, and it's, worth I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Uh,
But money is a very linear social relationship because for example, if I owe you 100 euros,
mhm.
then it's unlikely just in our current way of thinking that you will go and get that 100 euros from somebody else, for example. It's this very direct exchange that we want with money.
Mm.
Whereas what you're proposing is this idea of like, well, if you're a community and you're organizing around a community, then everybody benefits. So I can go and
Mm,
get that debt repaid from somebody else, and I can go and give to somebody else. And it's this fostering this idea of like one person wins in the community, then the community wins, as opposed to um, a very, well, I don't know, yeah, just linear
mm,
relationship. I
yeah,
think with money, like it's very possessed
yeah,
and
yeah,
possessive.
totally, totally. I mean, the thing with money is that it's today a private commodity, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, property is, part of the main issue of our civilization, but with with circles, it's like just trying to really represent the reality that we're always intertwined, interrelated, and interdependent.
Mm.
The money system today, the banking system, makes us all feel like individuals. Like we have our
Mm.
wage, we have our little bank account, and we don't tell anybody how much we have there,
Mm.
and it's all really awkward, and
Yeah.
and so guilty. Like you see it all in the Germans, like guilt and shame and guilt and debt are the same word in German.
Oh,
You know,
really?
yeah, yeah.
Ah, I
So
didn't know
like
that.
there is a lot of crazy moral economies going on that also like it's a way of colonization in a way. Like it makes people not be able to act, to separate things from each other, and that's why, as you were saying, like money today feels like this very thing about two atoms kind of
Mm.
maybe touching each other sometimes, but it's like but actually no, in reality everything's super interconnected. And the reason why all these ecological disasters is happening because the way it's interconnected, just helps the process of capital accumulation and the commodification of power by a few elite. You know,
This is amazing because if you get, enough of the right kinds of institutions or organizations agreeing to this, like I'm just imagining if you had like one building, one block of flats, and one, rather eccentric landlord will happily accept circles. I'm not sure where
yeah,
you'd
yeah,
find them, but like if you're gonna find them anywhere in Europe, it's probably Berlin. Um,
yeah.
and that would be it. Imagine like 20 people, those 20 people living in that building could then just solely go on circles. Like you've got your one shop that accepts it, maybe like your education or whatever, and that's it. There's your community. And then
Yeah,
people
it's
don't have to rely on money. They don't have to go and work,
mhm.
exploitatively and labor for they don't have to go and work for somebody else in order to just get enough to get by.
Totally. I mean, there are communities like that already emerging in Berlin,
Mm,
but again, like it's like a big flat build, a building with a bunch of beautiful people and so on. But those relationships are also, if they're gonna be able to not work and so on, it means that there is a machine of like social machine of many people
yeah.
giving them the stuff that they need, right? So the idea is that these hubs help to make other hubs happen,
Yeah.
and that you actually build bottom up economic and also political power. You know,
I think it's also about changing the concept of work. Work doesn't have to be hours that you put in exchange for money. It can also be tending your community garden, growing food, looking after somebody's kids, all of, giving back to
totally.
your community to sustain it. That can be
Mhm.
a form of work. Um,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, like,
That's the fundamental form of work. I would say like most work is just maintaining stuff.
mm,
Very few times we spend actually making a thing.
mm,
Most time it's just like, oh, how to make the microphone work, how to make how to clean like the cleaning the dishes,
mm,
the room and all these things and so on. But today this is not part of your wage check. Like so yeah, I mean, basic income challenges the idea of work fundamentally because it tries to release people from wage slavery,
yeah,
basically, like, and which is one of the fundamental cores of capitalism. It's like
yeah,
if people are tied to this wage, and if they don't work, then they die, kind of, basically.
yeah,
And so with a basic income, I mean, that's why we're trying to also say that it's not just that's like the idea of circles is it goes beyond that in saying like we want to also democratize the monetary creation and give that power to people so it becomes a commons, and not just in the purview of a private bank or the central bank, but really claim that power from the bottom up.
I mean, this is pretty revolutionary stuff. Wow. Do you think um do you think people are ready for it? Because whilst people might be ready for something new, or they might be frustrated, or certainly starting to recognize just how kind of stacked against them the cards are. But you think people are ready for something so fundamentally natural and yet still so alien to our current way of doing things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a matter of making it work,
Mm,
to really build those relationships, and then when people see it working, I think then it's easier,
yeah.
then it's really kind of, then it's way easier than trying to, yeah, like with these things, like the ideas are really going to the root of things, but I always try to come back to the present and be like, hey, no, okay, I have to go and talk to a farmer next week, and then I have to tell him or her that, this is important because of this and that, and he can benefit very practically. How can they also benefit? Because farmers are really constrained; they don't have time for you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Like,
And
so yeah.
how many people do you have on the system now?
So, as I said at the beginning, what happened was that this thing became viral on Twitter, and it was a bit of a crazy ride. I think after October, and I think right now we have over 100,000 people all over the planet who have this.
Oh my
We don't
God.
know how many of them are real, but it's quite a lot. So we're not. Yeah, we've been trying to organize and send out messages on the web about who wants to actually organize this in their local communities.
Right.
So we've had a nice responses. I don't know, in China, in Shenzhen, we heard about some 1,500 community that's already exchanging vegetables for circles. Some people in
Wow.
Chicago. Yeah, many people are emerging. Some communes in Portugal, Algarve, in Algarve, they're looking into circles, and maybe it's an option. But there are many alternatives also. Circles is not. It's just one of many
Mm,
different local currency projects that are emerging.
mm,
Um, and I think it's important to say that because there is a plurality. Like we need to get out of this idea of the monoculture of money.
mm.
There is just one money for everything, and there is projects in France. There's the Tuniter people in Kenya. There's Gratis Economics. There is Sardex in Sardinia. The Credit Common guys in the UK. There is so many different uh, protocols and systems emerging. What is needed is the social organization.
Right.
That's the key part.
And why do you think that bit's the most difficult?
Because I mean anybody can just build technology, I guess, and have it there. Like most of the technologies are already there, but to really build the social infrastructure to get people to think about money and to organize it differently and to give the resources for this funny money as
Mm,
uh, it's like it takes time, and I think oftentimes community currencies don't scale because they often lack the broader political like framework or idea that goes with it. It's more like a localist thing. Like, yeah, we're gonna organize this. It's mostly like very like I don't know permaculture people or people who are really interested in like building community at the local level. But with circles, we're trying to we're very political about it. Like
mm,
we're trying to say that okay, this technology we're trying to embed it with our ethics, with our values, to really try to make economic democracy a reality.
mm. How is Circles funded then?
So right now we were funded by a guy called Martin Koppelman. He started the idea of circles back in like 2013. And then there were like many different programmer people, crypto people around who were like trying to make teams to make it to develop it. And it was only until 2018, I think, at the end. Yeah, no, 2019, I think, at the end, or half of the year that we actually started coding it. So he became really rich at the beginning of the crypto bubble, and then he's a really nice guy, and so he started funding the project to make it a reality.
Right.
And now we're trying to like build campaigns to get like donations and people to support our work
Mm,
and be able to sustain it like that. We're also thinking of other crazy ideas to do this, like looking at the crypto markets. We're thinking, okay, maybe we can do some way in which we can fundraise a bunch of money in these crypto markets and then have that as a way to fund our work in the meantime.
mm,
That's totally separated from the circles, so people don't get confused.
mm.
We're thinking of ways. It's like we're trying to be very pragmatic about it.
Do you find that there is an ethical dilemma
Hmm.
in having to quote unquote play the game of the current financial system in order to fund this new potential financial or economic system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the contradiction that most community currency projects face. Like, it's people who want to build an alternative money system who still have to pay their rent
Yeah.
and have a wage to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the tricky part. I think we have to embrace the contradiction. Like, for example, I had this I have this text I wrote recently about making a deconstruction company to sort of deconstruct the many financialized constructions that happen in the city as a way of then buying back land, buying back flats,
Mm,
buying back buildings, and then give them for as social housing, communal living for people. That
yeah.
can be also co-owned by people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a way of showing the contradictions of financial capital,
Hmm.
uh, but whilst also trying to like show ironically its contradictions and also like try to claim spaces in the city, you know.
Yeah.
But
For sure. If just a lot could be undone if, some people with some money wanted to risk their own fortunes essentially to kind of upend markets and upend systems.
totally. I mean, I think it's a class thing. Like most people, who you have to really look at the capitalist class and understand that they're not all the same.
Hmm.
Like there are people, like, especially in the crypto world, there are many people who are really radical at the beginning, or are still really radical. They really wanted to create different social forms, different institutions, you know, and they just ended up with all this capital, and they're like, "Holy shit, what do I do with this?"
Yeah.
And there are many well-meaning people out there who are trying to really give their resources or part of their money or even fundraise to give to social projects, right? So I think it's really about creating these intersocial class alliances in a way, between the radical left and these crypto people um, and many other actors, right? And then have them, you know, uh, like talk those tensions through and those contradictions through. I think that's important because like the left, the radical left, is very precarious these days in Berlin.
Mm,
So it's
mm,
not and but it's really radical at the same time. And then the crypto people have the problem that they're trying to reinvent governance through all these DAOs and I don't know what, and it's really over engineered and sort of naive, and they see that they cannot replace, how to say, they cannot replace. Uh, they're realizing now that their money cannot replace social organization, you know, and so there is a potential alliances to be made there. I think that can only make things, stronger.
well, ultimately, that's what alliances do. And I think one of the maybe issues or hurdles that we're seeing in the way of progress is certainly an unwillingness for different factions to take the same side when ultimately the goal is the same and maybe the way of getting there is a bit is not similar. Um,
Mm.
and yet the radical left definitely has to accept its limitations and its failures over the past decade. I was had somebody on the podcast recently who his whole framework of his art and his writing and his activism now is concretized in his understanding that we've all failed. Otherwise, the
Mm.
world wouldn't be in the situation that it is today. And we
Yeah,
have 10 years to figure it out. So we better start, setting some realistic goals and some concrete goals very, very, very fast. So,
totally,
yeah, alliances are definitely how we're going to do that.
totally,
And
totally.
a lot could be done if the right kind of people had capital in order to, yeah, as you say, deconstruct capital. It's not just going to come from the bottom up. That's what we've seen.
Yeah, you need the alliances. I
Yeah.
mean, you need to seize the means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, capital is as the symbolic representation of power, and I think, I mean, people are getting over this, but like, well, we cannot abolish power. We have to decentralize it,
Mm.
and give it to everybody, to people. Like the Black Panthers said it best. Like, power to the people. Like,
Yeah.
it's it's.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, and I think it's not and I think it challenges many things because, yeah, I mean, we can go into like the problems of the left in Germany, but I don't. Maybe this is outside of the scope of this conversation. We're talking about circles. I'll probably get into trouble now.
What is the goal for circles then going forward? Like what kind of people do you want to see getting involved? What kind of institutions and organizations do you need to get involved going forward?
I think anybody who's interested in economic democracy
Mm,
and really building more ecological and democratic alternatives to the civilizational crisis that we have. There could be cooperatives, that are already on that path. We can provide a means of payment for cooperatives, a credit system for cooperatives.
mm,
That could be also research institutes.
mm,
We need a lot of research on what we're doing. There's so many new concepts that are emerging that we need like something like a Bell Labs or something for people to like start to produce knowledge around it and see
mm,
what are the best options. Like, yeah, there are so many good researchers out there doing work on like how do these networks actually look like and how do they benefit from having these complementary actors. And these are
mm,
knowledge that you can very easily translate to an activist and say like this is what you have to look for. So also activists as well.
yeah.
Anybody who's and also people who just want to organize locally where they are. They don't have to call themselves an activist. Just somebody who's just interested in seeing local change in their local environment,
Mm.
especially if there is an need for cash. Like you see it now in the U.S. Like they're talking about whether or not they're going to give this 1,000, I don't know how much
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when Trump was giving them more money. Like it's
Yeah.
insane. And so like I think it's really Circus is an alternative in the sense that it's trying to give people the ability to like decide what types of promises they want to create with each other. So yeah, I mean, what we want to do long term is to make basic income a reality. That's what I work for.
Yeah.
Also, it's also local municipalities. Like local majors. We're gonna do a campaign this year to push and get an alliance between different local majors all over the planet
Yeah.
that are for basic income to issue a basic income into being. Whether with circles or with something else or with like national money, I don't care. Like just to really get outside of the imagination of the moment and provide an alternative to the nationalist sentiment of the day.
That's fucking phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing because it solves so many problems to do this like via a technology like blockchain, but essentially also with that promise, that framework of a promise of an IOU of community. I mean, it combats so many of the issues that people want to bring up about universal basic income, whether it's about inflation or whether it's about God demotivating people or and all that absolute
Yeah,
nonsense.
yeah,
This is a
totally,
way to actually build it within and around existing social relationships and nurture them. And it's an
totally.
amazing idea.
Yeah, and it's also a practice. That's the important
Mm.
part. Like people in Europe think that they can solve all their problems just by thinking about them, and this is wrong. Uh, we need to act.
Do you think this is probably my final question? I'm conscious of the time. Do you think that Europe is the best place to start something like this, or do you think there are other corners of the world that are often overlooked?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in places where money is made scarce, where there is a lot of poverty, I think things like circles have a lot of power. So, like, for example, in
Mm,
Kenya, there is this amazing organization called Grassroots Economics that allows people to make their own community credit. And they make a community garden, and then out of that, they can produce a bunch of stuff that can be sold for this currency that
mm,
actually helps in their everyday household expenditures and so on. So that's really powerful. Like I think the challenge in Europe is to really break the imagination that all these bureaucratic institutions have like put on our heads. Like whether that's the central banks, private banks, the EU, all the nation states, and the bureaucracies of them, and so on. It's really it's really a challenge. I think that's also why it's harder to break it here, because people have been fed up this lie that they're all individuals, and They can only become successful by going up the ladder themselves and so on. I think people want something else. I just think we need to find ways where they can get organized.
Well, there's a lot of safety in the existing system. And I'm not one to think that there's a they with a capital T that are dictating and demanding kind of what goes on. Like I think that we're all
Yeah,
essentially products of,
yeah,
the
totally,
systems in place.
totally.
So the
Yeah,
crisis of imagination it's not that it's with the proletariat, for example, or the people on the ground. The crisis of imagination is with pretty much everybody,
yeah,
because
totally.
it's like like patriarchy, it hurts everybody. It's not just something that hurts women. Like capitalism, it hurts everybody. Even
Yeah,
if you go up the echelons of class and wealth to the very top, look at the mental health problems. Like this is not a system where people are
yeah,
winning, we're all losing. And it's an international crisis of imagination.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I studied. I had the opportunity to study at the LSE. I had a scholarship, and I met some people there who were like, getting jobs at the UN, in the World Bank, in
Mm,
the IMF, and all these big ass institutions. And you could tell that they just like that they were kind of like they knew that it had no effect, it had no change. If anything, it made things worse. Um, and you're right, like, and these are people who have so much power, so much
yeah.
knowledge, so much wealth, who are at the top of these ladders, and they really have this like crisis of the imagination, as you say.
Mm,
And they're looking for options, ideas, ways out. And I think that's yeah, part of the issue. Like we really need to free the imagination again.
yeah.
Give the power of the imagination to
Yeah.
people again.
Yeah. And break down as well these party lines and these, class lines as well, and really explicate like this isn't just about bringing, some people up a level
Yeah,
or whatever. This is about literally freeing everybody from the a lifetime of servitude essentially to something that doesn't serve us. Like you will
totally,
win. Come and help.
totally. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you really want a classless society and abolish the patriarchy, capitalism, all these things, it's really about studying with yourself, but then also with the people in your communities where you are, organizing
Yeah.
where you are, and really changing social relations.
Yeah.
Money as a social relation is really hard to change because we're
Yeah.
so colonized by it that we don't see it. It's so close to us, we don't see it.
Mm.
And that's really part of the challenge. That's why we should think about it as a territory of defense.
Territory of
Uh,
defense.
you know,
It's amazing.
just like just like your body and also the land.
Yeah.
Those are also territories of defense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Something that can be used to create the kind of society and community that we want, as opposed to something that demands all of our hours and energy and health.
Yeah. Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question also? It's like just
yeah,
so why did you make this podcast, or why are you making this podcast?
sure. So I'm really interested in other centric forms of media, and just other centric ways of doing things. And I wanted to create this in order to, yeah, platform projects, visions, people who are working to protect the planet and empower people. It did originally start as that idea, but within a different form, and yeah, came to be this. I think that, as you say, there's a lot of fantastic projects going on at the moment around the world, and oftentimes there's a lack of bridge. There's also sometimes a lack of, how do I put this, a vernacular that is a little bit exclusive or
Mm,
radical to a mainstream audience, and I hope to kind of, yeah, be able to help build a part of that bridge in a way. I also want to learn. I'm also very, very keen to know how, as a citizen, I can do my best and what kind of projects to get involved with. And
mm,
it's definitely kind of acting as a framework for some of the ideas that I'm having and I want to put into practice. God, it's such a joy. Like, what an amazing excuse to call up all of you fantastic people doing all sorts of stuff, and like get you on the phone for an hour and a half and learn about what you're doing under the
mm,
guise of, interviewing you. It's
mm,
amazing. It's the best job I've ever
mm.
had that doesn't pay a single penny.
Lovely. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I hope
Cool.
so. I hope so. Tell me, Julio, because I know that you have to go. Who would you like to platform?
I'm thinking because Uh, it's this thing of like, if I platform somebody and they're really, really busy, they're gonna be angry at me because they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, Julio, why are you putting more work than I do?" But I'll platform my friend Brett Scott, who does a lot of good work around money, actually. Yeah, he's a good guy. I think you'll enjoy having the conversation with him.
Okay, cool.
He has a website called, I think it's Altered States of Money,
Okay.
or Altered States of Monetary Consciousness, or something like this. So he's a friend. You know, he just moved to Berlin, and he's also here in the scene now, helping to get things going.
Julio, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Hello, hello. If you loved that, which I'm sure you did, how couldn't you? Please leave Platform Enterprise a 5-star review and subscribe over at www.platformenterprise.com. My aim is to not be dependent on social media overlords as quickly as possible, so subscribing to my mailing list is the best way to help me out. Thank you. You can find Julio on Twitter at Julio_Linares_. And you can also learn more about circles at www.joincircles.net. Okay, thank you so much for supporting the podcast, everyone. See you next week.